All right, let's go ahead and continue right where we left off in the previous clip. So we went through the process of binding all the pieces for the front of the drone. Let's now move on to the repulsors. So we first actually want to bind this piece to the actual repulsor base joint. So we'll select that geometry, shift select the joint, go to skin, bind skin, and there we go. So if we move this piece around, you can see that geometry is following along. Now for this piece right here, basically we want all of the rest of the repulsor to follow along with this joint. Now if we go into our outliner here and scroll down in the actual drone group, we want to find the repulsor group. And this group contains all of the actual individual repulsors. And if we go ahead and expand this group and take a look at the right side here, and then we can expand this group. And you can see we have front, mid, and back. So we'll take a look at front. We'll open this up. And then we'll go ahead and select the actual repulsor spin. So you can see that the repulsor spin group contains all of the geometry except for that first piece that we just skinned to the repulsor base joint. So we'll go ahead and select this geometry here, or this group. Shift select the repulsor pivot joint. Go to skin, bind skin. And there we go. So now if we move this joint around, you can see we're pivoting along that joint, and this entire repulsor piece is following along, which is exactly what we want. Now we need to actually go ahead and bind the cable to this joint chain here. So we'll go ahead and select the geometry, and then we'll shift select all the joints here. So we'll start with this base joint, we'll select the mid joint, and then the end joint, go to skin, bind skin. And then now you can see, since we have a joint chain here, if we move this mid joint, you can see it's going to basically control the back or half section of this hose piece. We select the main joint there, and that's going to control this entire hose or cable piece. And if we select again this pivot joint, you can see that everything is going to move along. Now you'll notice that this cable is not really behaving how we want. What we want to happen is we want to be able to move this repulsor around and have the hose move in a more believable way, meaning that we want the actual end section of this hose to stay connected up here at the top of the drone, and then have sort of this back section that is connected to the repulsor itself to actually be the part that is moving. So we'll get a more believable movement on the actual cable piece rather than having the entire cable follow along with the movement of the drone. However, that is going to be something we're going to set up in the next module. We don't really want to worry about that just yet. We're just going to focus on the actual skinning process. So we've skinned the actual front repulsor here. Let's move on to the mid section. So again, just like before, we'll select this geometry right here. Shift select that base joint, skin, bind skin. And then go to the repulsor right group, go to mid, open this up, go to the repulsor spin, shift select that joint there, go to skin, bind skin, and then we'll move on to actual cable. So we'll select the cable geometry, shift select these three joints here, skin, bind skin, and then we can very quickly kind of test this out, make sure it's bound to the geometry that we want. All right, that looks good. And let's move on to this piece right here. So again, just like before, selecting this piece first, binding that to this joint, skin, bind skin. And then we want to open up the repulsor back group, select the repulsor spin, and then bind that to the pivot joint. And then finally, we'll do the cable. So select the cable, shift select this joint chain, skin, bind skin, and then we can do another quick test just to make sure that it's bound properly, and that looks correct. All right, so now that we've gone through the process of skinning all the repulsors for the right side, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and let you finish the left side here, since it's the exact same process that we just went through. All right, so I've actually finished the process of skinning all of the pieces on the left side here on our repulsors. So we can do a quick test. We can make sure that everything is working here, and it should all be set up properly. So all of these pieces should be skinned to the repulsors there. All right, now you'll notice that if we select this root joint now, all the pieces that we've skinned are now moving. However, the rest of the drone is not moving along with the actual root joint. And that's because we need to skin everything else to the root joint. So all the pieces that aren't moving, we need to go ahead and skin to the root joint. Now to do this, it's a really simple process. Let's go ahead and scroll up in our outliner. And we just want to select the actual drone group. And that's going to select all of the geometry there. We'll press 4 on our keyboard to go to wireframe. And then we'll shift select this root joint. We'll go to skin, bind skin. Now you'll notice that we'll get this error down here at the bottom. And that's just letting us know that a piece of geometry or group of geometry that we've selected is already skinned to a joint. Now I don't want you to worry too much about that error. It's just letting us know that some of the geometry that we selected is already skinned. And if that's the case, it'll just move on to the next piece of geometry. So we've gone ahead and we've applied that skinning process. So now if we select this root, everything else is going to follow along because we've skinned the rest of the drone to that root joint. And then of course we can move the root, everything's going to follow along. Then we can go in here and still manipulate these other joints independently of that root joint, which is exactly what we want. So we've actually finished the process of creating this basic setup of this rig. So we've created all of the joints that we need, and then we've also went through the process of skinning all the geometry to those joints. So everything is moving properly. However, we still have quite a bit to do on this drone. We still need to go in here and create a rig that is more animator friendly. For instance, we've mentioned that these repulsors and the cables need to behave in a way that we want. So if we move the repulsor around, the actual cable piece needs to stay connected up here at the top of the drone. And then the end section is going to be the thing that will follow along with the repulsor. So that will be something that we'll need to actually set up. So now that we've finished sort of the structure of this rig, we're actually going to continue on in the next module and start building more functionality and create a more animator friendly rig. So we'll go ahead and do that in the next module.